Welcome to the Writing Black Joy podcast, where we celebrate the joyful narratives of Black creatives, changing the world one story at a time. I am your host, Sophia Robinson. Here, you'll find conversations with some amazing Black writers and creatives, learn more about their projects and the joy they're bringing into the world, find inspiration for your own creative ventures, and dive deep into the topics that we think and write about. The guests on this podcast are writers of fiction, nonfiction, poetry, music, plays, and so much more, as well as creative guests whose work is all around writing joyful narratives on history's pages. So if you are a writer, a creative, or a lover of the arts, or you simply want to hear some good conversations, keep on listening and welcome to the show. Welcome back to Writing Black Joy. I hope that you are enjoying the season so far. I would love it if you subscribe to the show and share your favorite episode with a friend. You can send them over to www.writingblackjoy.com, or you can send them the link directly. I would love that. Also, please join the mailing list. You'll find a link in the show notes and over on our website, as I said earlier, www.writingblackjoy.com. I actually have some giveaways that are only available for folks who are on the mailing list or following me over on Instagram at Writing Black Joy, including books by some of this season's guests, Writing Black Joy card decks, and more. So definitely get on the mailing list and follow me over on Instagram. Now, on to today's guest, Gregory G-Wiz Rutledge. Now, Gregory is a high-performance coach, an empowerment strategist, and the visionary behind the Question Everything brand. He is not your typical speaker. He is the one who digs in, asks the hard questions that others avoid, and shatters the limitations that hold people back. With a dynamic blend of raw personal experiences, transformational insights, and unapologetic honesty, Gregory helps coaches, creators, and business professionals unlock the power they didn't know they had. His journey spans from surviving life's toughest challenges to mastering UX design, entrepreneurship, and the art of storytelling. Gregory's signature approach combines high-level strategy, focused mastery, and a relentless curiosity that inspires the audience not just to dream, but to rise, transform, and conquer. He's the coach that won't let you settle for average because he's walked the path from doubt to destiny, and he knows there's always more to discover. Gregory and I had a great conversation where we discussed his own transformation from waiter to greater, that's the name of his book, how he leveraged his creative and service-based background to transform his career, how he reframed his relationship with questioning and curiosity, how his spirituality guides his writing and his life, how his creative background has fed into the book he's writing, his proudest moments, and the ABC of confidence. You do not want to miss this. We also talked about cold showers, and he has almost convinced me to try it. Almost. In addition, early on, Gregory mentioned his mentor, who I realized we didn't name, and his name is Myron Golding. He has a great YouTube channel, so if you're building a business, you should check him out. I have dropped a link in the show notes as well. Thank you so much for listening, and I hope that you enjoy this conversation as much as I did. Welcome back to Writing Black Joy, and I'm so happy to have with me today Gregory. You will have heard a little bit about him in the intro, but he's going to share even more with us now. So Gregory, you and I have been connected by a mutual friend who always makes the best connections, so I'm really looking forward to this conversation. And I know that you have quite a few projects going on at the moment, so I am curious. Firstly, tell us a little bit about your work and how you weave all of your different projects together.
That's a loaded question.
Is it? It wasn't meant to be loaded.
No, it's okay. I'm still in the process of figuring that out myself. But what I've come to is I help people transform. I'm a transformational leader. Confidence, focus, anything that can take a person from where they are now to where they want to be. Mm-hmm. That has been my journey. Is I've gone from waiter to greater, which is the book I'm working on publishing right now, but it's my story of how I went from being a waiter to the supervisor. And in doing that, I was able to get hired on in a tech company, learn about UX design, which was a field that paid six figures, to do what I've already done my whole life, just didn't realize I could be paid for it. and learned about it in a 6 month boot camp. Got like I networked my way into the field and went from making 213 an hour to $250,000 a year. And so I feel I keep repeating that story, and I needed to just write that book. But it also showed me that you can leverage your background. I have a background in music, production, rapping, writing songs. That helped me to be a better speaker, writer, performer, someone that gets on stage with no fear, getting on camera and leveraging your background like with service. Business is just service and personal development in disguise, right? And so I kind of use little elements from everything I've done to create this transformational leadership journey to teach people how to go from where they are to where they want to be.
Oh, I love that. And it's interesting because I've had a few conversations this season about almost like reinventing yourself, or whatever sort of language you put to it. And I do like that sort of ideas around that, because I think you take what you know and what you do for granted, right? Like you think,
Yes.
oh, this isn't useful because everybody does it. And then all of a sudden you discover nobody does that. Like, that's a skill that you actually have. And it's great to then be able to leverage that into, creating something that you want to move into. So I have a question. I know that you are all about question everything, right? Which I love because I'm very much full of curiosity and questions. Tell me where that came from.
So there was this symbol my sisters used to draw a long time ago. And you know how you doodle in your notebooks? I would
Mm.
always, it was this infinity symbol. And I didn't even see it as an infinity symbol at first, but it was a question. And then there was another question mark. And the dots, instead of being at the end of the question mark down here, they were
Mm.
at the end of it, at the top of it. But the way it looked was an infinity symbol with that. And
Ah.
I've always been inquisitive. Like I've always asked so many questions that I got on people's nerves. And
Me too.
I've always hated questions because growing up, a question was, there was always an ulterior motive. So I didn't know what to expect after a question happened. And I wanted to get over the stigma of questions, especially since in my field in UX design, we ask a lot of questions because we
Mm.
have to know where a person is, where they want to be, and like how can we bridge the gap? But we have to find out, like I can't make any assumptions. And so if
Mm.
I don't ask the right questions, I'm never going to get the right information to take people to the right place. So it came about two ways. One, I know the power of questions because questions have been the thing that have changed my life. Someone asked me a question one time, who are you? And everything I answered, they told me, nope, that's your name. That's what you do. That's, who you are in relation to your mom. That's your social status. Like there was all these things that I thought I was. And at the end, they never really told me who I was. And so
Mm.
that question just kept circulating. Who am I? Who am I? Someone finally said, you're a child of God. And I was like, huh. And that's what you are before anything else. And so it came from a knowing the power of questions, but also wanting to become a better question asker.
Mm.
So many times I'll go on a drunkalog, right? And give all this context and never really ask a question. It's just all this stuff, but it's not a succinct question. So
Yeah.
getting better at asking questions, getting better at being a better interviewer, just wanting to break the stigma of questions in my life and
Mm.
use them to help other people.
Yeah. And I really like that. It's one of my favorite books that I read years ago was called More Beautiful Question, and it's about the power of inquiry. And the thing I liked about it is I like that idea of the inquiry and the curiosity driving the question as opposed to you talking earlier about the ulterior motive. Like I think sometimes people ask a question trying to drive a particular answer, right?
Yes.
And the better you are at asking questions, the easier it is for you to spot when those questions are being asked. But I think also it's almost like a question is just a tool, right? And it's like how it's used to determine whether it's going to drive you deeper towards what you're looking for, and what you're looking for could be, a relationship, a connection with somebody. So you ask those questions to get to know that person better, or it can, take you, take you somewhere else. So I love that curiosity, and I love questions. So that really jumped out at me when I saw it and I saw it on your message to me.
Nice.
So you are definitely a creative. You talked about being a songwriter, obviously musician, etc., rapper, that type of thing. And now you've written a book. So tell us a little bit about your sort of writing and creative journey experience.
Well, I've been writing books for years, and it always
Mm.
starts as a specific book and then turns into an autobiography. And I'm like, nobody knows who you are. You can't do an autobiography yet. They don't care, right? So narrowing it down to a specific story that I find myself repeating, it's like, every time someone asks me this question, I could just tell them to buy my book and then tell them a little bit about it and then let them go read. And this time was, I have like 3 or 4 different books that I want the world to read. But
Mm-hmm.
this one I think is the most impactful story. And from it can bridge off all the other books.
Mm-hmm.
So From Waiter to Greater is the story of how anyone can level up starting from where they are.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I've seen so many success stories about people that have gone from what seemed like the worst situation to the best situation. And I am one of those people, whether I realize it or not. And then there's the book God Kisses that I'm working on, which is, it's tattooed on my hand. It's those serendipitous, coincidental moments that are almost too serendipitous and coincidental to not be of a divine nature.
Mm.
And if you take God out of my story, my life doesn't make sense.
Mm.
But with God, you see all of the things that seem like the worst things that could have happened to me that led to the best things that could have happened to me.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to teach people the power of being able to recognize those divine coincidences in their lives. And
Mm.
that's the real book I want to put out there, but I feel like I need to teach people something before I can show
Mm.
people the divine journey in it, if that makes sense.
In theory, it makes sense. First of all, I would say you talked earlier about writing a book and then it turns into an autobiography and nobody knows who you are. But I think stories are also a powerful way of teaching people something. And so I think if you're gonna teach someone something, unless you're writing a textbook, there are going to be stories in there. It could be your story. It could be somebody else's story. It's not super, it doesn't matter in, in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah.
The story that you know the best is yours. So I don't think having your stories in there is a bad thing. And in fact, I think that will definitely really help to connect with people and really impact them. It's funny because when you jumped on the call, you talked about watching a video with your mentor, and our mutual friend actually sent me one of those videos this morning, and it was about just that. It was about, are you thinking about the person whose problem you're trying to solve? Or are you thinking about yourself? So if you're writing that story like me, then that, to me, that's the framing of it. That will determine how it comes across. And so I think how you tell that story will determine the impact that it has as much as the story that you tell.
Yeah.
So I don't think you're on a bad path if you feel like your personal stories are coming out in your message, because I think that's what's going to happen. It's just about how you sort of frame it. Um, how do you find your own? Because the first thing you talked about was bringing the things from your background into the next thing you want to do. How did that same, songwriting and that type of thing, how did that factor into being able to write your book?
So to answer that question,
Mm-hmm.
take a little bit from each part. So waiting tables, one thing I realized is that I'm always afraid to be on stage.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a moment in time where I was waiting tables on a Friday night. It was so packed. It was busy. I'm walking around in my personal life. I'm afraid to be in front of people and people to look at me because I'm insecure at that time. but I realized I'm afraid to get on stage and
Mhm.
perform my music. But I'm on stage the whole time, every day. Every day I go to work, I'm on stage. And
Yeah.
so, like, what's the difference between me being on stage, meeting a complete stranger, getting to know them within 45 minutes to an hour, and creating an experience for them that is so impactful that they're going to take more money than they've already paid for their meal and tip me on top of it?
Yeah.
I mastered that. So I'm like, why is it so hard for me to do that? So that's what I got from, that was one of the biggest things I got from waiting tables. From writing songs, I, I found myself, like, really found my voice as a musician when I started writing stories. And when you're writing a song, you have 2 to 3 verses, a bridge and a chorus to tell a story.
Yeah.
So you have to really narrow down to, like, the most impactful parts of that story. And it has
Mm.
to be cohesive, and you have a certain amount of time to do it. And so writing speeches and being able to really tell the story and the pieces that you actually need for that story, uh, that came from that. Thinking of better ways to say things.
Yeah.
A time where I would use vulgarity in my music, and I found that to be mentally and vocally lazy. Like, there are better ways to say things without ever using that, just as powerful ways to say things that don't
Mm.
involve any kind of vulgarity. And
Mm.
so there was a journey I went on to make sure I never used another um, curse word in my life. And I had made it through music. So there's part of um, that journey for me that was cleansing, part of it that was
Mm.
like a challenge. It helped me to grow and develop myself because every song I wrote was another challenge.
Mm.
And from the UX design field I'm in now, there's a design process that you can use these design principles to design anything. And it's empathizing, defining. So I empathize with my user or my client or whoever it is. I define exactly what their problem is. I ideate, I come up with some ideas of what I can do to solve that problem for them. I prototype something, like just put something together, and then I test
Mm.
it. And I go back through that cycle. Okay, now that I'm testing it, let me test it with that same person. Is this what you were looking for, or could it be better? Okay,
Mm.
what's the problem now? Or, like, what could be better? Let's come up with some more ideas. Let's prototype something else. Let's test it again. And you can go through that process over and over again. So those are just three of the top things that come to mind with that.
Mm.
I
Yeah.
think that there's so many other areas from, like, so many other places from my background that come into play, but those are the top three that
Mm.
come to mind.
Yeah. I really like that. One of the things the very first thing you mentioned from being a waiter and how realizing, the amount of time that you were spending virtually on a stage, quote unquote, helped you with your music. And I was having this conversation with my sister a while ago because I almost feel like the opposite. We grew up between like church recitations on a Sunday that we do these little church concerts or like programs and stuff. Between that and I did a lot of drama and dance and that type of thing. I didn't realize how much that benefited me. Like I changed roles recently and I do a lot of teaching now. And people are like, how can you stand up in front of all these people and say stuff? And I'm like, actually, I never thought about how, being on a stage to sing, perform, I sing in a choir, though, like how those things transferred into this thing.
Yeah.
And I think that goes, as I said, it goes back to what we were saying earlier. Like everything that you do in life kind of gives you this skill or this sort of thing that you may not even be realizing because you do it so often that it's almost become second nature. And so I love how you kind of, now you're able to kind of reverse engineer almost like, okay, these are things that fed into me and actually they then allowed me to then go further, not just in business, but also with your creativity. You talk about not cussing. Honestly, that is, I think anything to do with coming up with language is very amazing. And so I actually love that example.
Thank you.
What is your proudest moment thus far?
Ooh, proudest moment thus far.
Hmm.
Wow. I don't think anyone's ever asked me that question. I would say my proudest moment thus far is, despite the imposter syndrome, despite the tapes that play in my head of I'm not enough, or I'm just this person I've always been, or I am all the labels that I've ever been based on what family or people closest to me have said. I think my proudest moment is that I keep going
Mm,
despite all of that garbage that I've been programmed to think and believe, and that in so doing, I have found that the people closest to you fear your greatness and try to keep you down, because if you level up, that forces them to either have to level up or admit that there's something they're doing that's not the best for them. And so to keep going and know that there's a world out there of people that will support you
mm,
and that will love you, and that just because your family or your friends closest to you that you grew up with don't see you as anything other than what you've been, the proudest moment is stepping outside of the comfort zone and the lies to see that there's a whole world out there of people that love you, who you are, what you do, and what you are able to bring to them, and not giving up. So all that to say, my proudest moment is the fact that despite not feeling worthy, not feeling like I have anything to offer, I never give up.
mm. That's great. The thing I like about that is because I think that is the way to achieve so many things. I was someone I was having a conversation with yesterday. We were talking about writing a book, but we were talking about different things. And I was like, the way to achieve those things is to not give up. I think we think that you have to have this talent or this, and those things are nice. Like, don't, that working on your craft. I'm not knocking it, but also, you have to also not stop until you get to the the sort of result that you're working towards. So, last question I'm going to ask before we move on to the next sort of segment of the show. So, given that obviously you could tell them to read your book and everything, but if you just, you're going up in the elevator and you just had to give a bit of advice to a young person who maybe they're a young creative or maybe they're a young person in business and you want to make an impact on them, what would you say or what advice might you give?
I would tell them the ABCs of confidence. So become aware of where you are and what you're thinking right now. Is that serving you? Is that something that's giving you the fuel to be more or better than you've been? Like, what are the thoughts that are on repeat in your head? Because those are going to determine where you go from here. And so
Mm,
if you don't believe in yourself, or you have something constantly happening, but you're not aware of it, first bring it to your awareness and then analyze those beliefs. That's the A. B is beliefs. What are you believing? Like, what meaning have you given to this awareness or to these thoughts? Like, do you believe that what your mom or your sister or your fourth grade teacher said about you is real? And if so, are those beliefs serving you? Are those beliefs helping you to get to the place you need to be? Are those beliefs helping or hindering you? And then finally, the C, the commitment to confidence, right? Like, if they're not, what belief could you bring into your awareness that you could commit to that it would help you be your future self? What could you commit to that could make you confident in who you are and deliver the value that you were meant to deliver to the world? That
oh,
that
hmm.
that would be what I would give them.
I love it. I love that. Oh, that is a really great, I think, way to kind of bridge us into the next part of the conversation, which I call
Nice.
the Joy Five. And I just set a timer for 5 minutes. We do some rapid fire questions, and they're just a kind of like a fun set of questions. So, first question: what's bringing you joy right now?
What is bringing me joy right now is the journey of building something I've never built before and
Mm.
all of the pain and struggle that comes with it, but knowing that I can keep going and I have a support group there for me.
Excellent. What's something that you want to try for fun?
Something I want to try for fun. Skydiving.
Oh my goodness, you are literally the third guest who has said that. I think we definitely need to arrange some skydiving for my guest. This is awesome. All right. A quote that represents or brings you joy. I know you're a master of quotes, so I'm looking forward to this.
Oh, okay. So the one that from your question before we met was, if anything scares you, face it head on so that nothing stands in your way. And that evolved for me from a quote from Eleanor Roosevelt, which was, do one thing every day that scares you.
Mm.
Well, so doing that one thing every day that scares me, I found that I was afraid of everything when I thought I was afraid of nothing. But I also found that when I faced things head on and didn't let the fear hold me back, I was able to do anything. So anything that stands in your way, face it head on so that nothing stands in your way.
I love it. What returns you to joy? So you talked about you're building something you've never built before. There's all these difficult parts of it. What do you find will bring you back to joy after going through any difficulties in life?
I have a playlist I made on purpose that is crying music that it encourages me to cry because, you know, growing up in a black household, you're told that you shouldn't, quit that crying or I'm gonna give you something to cry about. Like
Oh
crying
yeah.
is frowned upon. And so just getting that out, tears are the language that we use in prayer. When we don't have the words to talk to God, the tears do it for us. And so just listening to that playlist or music in general, but that playlist when I need cleansing, a playlist of electronic music that's upbeat. That's my jam. Or songs that remind me of my childhood, good times in my childhood. So music, definitely
Yeah,
music.
I love that. And I'm the sort of person that music can make me cry. Like it doesn't even have to be the lyrics. It's just like sometimes a song just hits me and I'm like, so
Yes.
I totally feel that for sure. What is something that you dread, but you always feel good afterwards?
Cold showers.
Ah, the cold shower. Well
Yeah.
done.
I can't wait until I have a cold plunge installed, but for now it's a cold shower for me. I just, you know that when you grab that shower head and you turn on the coldest and it's on your naked body, that is going to be the worst feeling you have. But if you do it first thing in the morning, there's nothing else that'll happen to you that day that is worse than that. And so you can achieve anything if you start
Uh-huh.
your.
Wow. Gino, you're the first person who's explained it to me in a way that I would actually consider it because I know quite a few people who do it, but like they've never been able to articulate it for me in that way. So I
Oh,
might try
wow.
it. I'll let you know. And what are you dreaming about?
I'm dreaming about making a dent in the other side of the universe that Steve Jobs didn't touch.
Hmm.
So such an impact on the world that people remember me years after I'm gone because I've changed the world.
Wow. Big dreams. I love, love, love. I love big dreams and I love speaking them out there. So that's brilliant. That is great. We got to our 5 minutes and so that was awesome. I really appreciate you for joining me on this conversation. It was so fun. It was so good. Anything you want to leave with our guests? Any last thought?
I do have one final thought.
Hmm.
If you be strong and courageous and you do everything passionately, you will inevitably have a life that you love.
Hmm.
And so I encourage you to be strong and courageous, do everything with passion so that you can have a life that you love or have love in everything you do in life.
That is brilliant. Thank you so much, Gregory. This was awesome. It was totally worth the wait. And thank you to my listeners. I will hear you all soon. Thank you for joining us today. You can find out more about our guests in the show notes below. And don't forget to hit subscribe and share this episode with a friend. Until next time, I send you big love.